Hi guys, welcome to my next video for Rock Bottom Airsoft. It's good to see you again. It's your first time here. Good to see you. Today we're going to do a bit of a follow-up really. If you may recall my last video, if you haven't watched that already, maybe give that a watch. I was basically comparing different types of battery that you might use in your Airsoft AEGs, your replicas. I had a look at NIMH and lithium polymer and lithium ion batteries, just to see, you know, what sort of difference it made in the performance of the replica, and also to give you a bit of an overview of the different chemistries and what they're capable of, those batteries. They're all 7.4 volt batteries. Now with that in mind, that opened up some points that I thought maybe I should do a follow-up video looking more specifically towards lithium polymer. There's a lot of rumours fly about lithium polymer. You'll see a lot of things on the internet about LIPO fires and how they can puff up and explode and how they're generally dangerous. And while a lot of those things, they are true, those batteries are capable of creating quite a fire. You know, it can burn and burn. It can be quite dangerous if they're not cared for properly. So what I'm going to look at today is just a few more pointers on caring for your Airsoft batteries, storing your Airsoft batteries, and really the sort of things that you should be doing with specifically lithium polymer batteries if you want them to last you a long time, if you want them to perform well, if you don't want them to puff up and potentially catch fire, and also if you really just want them to be giving the performance that you expect for a long period of time without ruining them. Also, I'll look at some charging and the charger that I use and some techniques for charging your batteries, and also we'll have a look at some safety gear associated with that as well. So let's get straight into it. The charger that I use is this charger. This is the Turnigy AccuCell C150. Now this charger, this particular one, you can still get hold of this on the online. I have seen them on eBay and places like that. I think this one might actually have been replaced by a newer version, but this one you can pick up for around about 35 to 60 pounds. There's a wild variation in price. I did manage to find a slightly newer version, which is again a Turnigy charger and will do you fine for charging lithium polymer and lithium ion batteries. That one retails at £38. I'll put a link in the description to the one that I found. I'll also put a link to the one that I found on eBay for this specific charger. There's many brands of charger. You want a smart charger. You want a charger that's capable of charging with a balanced charge, because lithium polymer and lithium ion batteries both need to be balanced charged. So any charger that you're looking at for lithium polymer or lithium ion must be a balanced charger. Now with that in mind, a NIMH battery is charged a bit more simply. It doesn't need a balanced charger. You'll get those trickle chargers. You still want a smart charger. The good thing about the C150 AccuCell, which this is what the charger looks like out of the box. The good thing about this charger is it is capable of charging pretty much all batteries. You can charge anything with this. It'll do lithium polymer, lithium ion, NIMH, NICAD, pretty much any battery chemistry you can think of, this will charge. I charged all the batteries in my previous video using this charger. I charge all my batteries for game days and testing using this charger. So with the charger, you'll normally, if you get one like this, which is better to go for, you'll get a number of items that are quite important with it. You'll need one of these with any charger that you buy. That is a balanced charge breakout board. This basically enables you to balance charge lithium polymer, lithium ion batteries. So you will receive one of those. That's quite important. You'll then obviously get your main lead for charging. That basically just plugs into the Dean's connector in my case on your battery, and your balance lead plugs into the balance board. That allows you to charge. You also get some croc clips. I never use the crocodile clips, and they're for charging batteries that you're not going to have a terminal on. This one is quite interesting because on this battery charger, as well as this, you'll also get a mains lead. Obviously this is a UK plug and it's made for using on a UK power supply, but if you're out in the field and you don't have access to a mains point or a generator or something to plug in there, what this enables you to do is plug it into a 12 volt supply. A 12 volt supply obviously is on your car, so if you're out at an event where there's no facility for charging batteries and you find yourself in a situation where you need to charge your batteries, if you buy a charger such as this one that has the capability of taking a 12 volt supply directly, then you can basically just clip this onto your car battery and away you go. You'll be able to charge your batteries with this pretty much the same as if you were using the mains. So, you know, a decent charger is a must. You'll get all of these items included in there, and obviously that is something that you want. But the main things that we're going to be focusing on today is these items. These are the items that we would be using. Obviously you need to plug it into the mains. This is for plugging it into your battery, and this is for plugging into the balance port on the battery. So as well as needing a decent charger, which we have here, there's another few things that come in handy for lithium polymer. This is what we call a LIPO bag. You'll find these very cheap. These retail around about £5 all the way up to £10 to £20 depending on the size of LIPO bag you get. Now you will find videos online. I've done a bit of research. These won't completely contain a LIPO fire, but they may contain it long enough that you can get the battery away from any sources of ignition, so it's not going to burn your house down. It's going to contain the fire long enough for you to do something about it. In the case of the testing that I've seen, it's usually a lot bigger batteries than we would use in Airsoft that these have had a problem in, you know, containing. So you should be alright with the majority of Airsoft batteries in one of these. I always place my batteries in a LIPO bag when they're charging, and I never leave them unattended. That's very important, but we'll get back to that in a second. So that's a LIPO bag, well worth getting one of those. Now when you're out in the field, you don't want to allow your battery voltages to drop too low. What we have here is a small voltmeter for measuring the LIPO voltage. It's very simple to use. You can get these online. They're not very expensive, around about £5. Well worth having. It has an inbuilt alarm. I'm not sure if you could find a way of mounting this on your replica in some way, or containing it within the replica. I certainly can't fit it in any of mine. But what I like to do is check my battery's voltage periodically throughout the day, really. If I'm in the safe zone and there's a game over, I would tend to check the battery. Now I'll warn you in advance, I'll show you on this LIPO. This is an 11.1 1000 milliamp hour battery by Giant Power, which we'll be using an example later. But in order to check the voltage, I simply plug the balance lead into it. That's your alarm to check that it's working, and it gives us 11.6 volts total, 3.87, 3.88 and 3.91, because there's 3 cells in the battery because it's an 11.1 volt battery. So that tells me that that's in storage charge. So it's a good way of checking your voltages. So they're worth having for the sake of £5, just so you can check your LIPO midway through the day. So those are the items that I tend to use to keep my batteries safe. So what do we mean when we're saying about battery safety? Let's get into that first of all very quickly. Battery safety, these are both lithium polymer batteries. They're both 11.1 volt. This one's an 1100 milliamp hour. This one's 1000 milliamp hour. And they're two different batteries. You can see one slightly bigger than the other. But when we're saying battery safety, what we really want to do with the lithium polymer is don't bash these batteries about. They're not really built for taking hard knocks or, you know, sudden impacts. You certainly don't want to puncture the batteries. If you puncture them, you are on the hiding for a fire there. With regard to charging, it's very important, as I say, to place these in a LIPO bag or some sort of safe container while they're charging. With regard to charging, don't charge them up fully and leave them for a long time charged. You want to put these into storage charge, which is around about 3.8 volts per cell. So the chargers that we're recommending here, these chargers will have a storage mode on them, which will enable you to put the battery in storage. Now, when you're putting the battery in storage, it'll automatically charge it to a point where it's 3.8 volts on a decent battery charger. All my batteries are put in storage after a game day. I usually try to play a game day, if not once a week, once every 2 weeks. I prefer to leave my batteries in storage charge when I'm not using them. 3.8 volts per cell, whether it's 7.4 or 11.1, that's what you want to be storing them at. Keep them in a storage charge, don't leave them fully charged. Now at the same time, you don't want to deplete your battery below 3.2 volts per cell. So if you remember me showing you this little voltmeter and LiPo alarm, that basically tells us what each individual cell's battery, what each individual cell in the battery is sitting at. We want those cells to be higher than 3.2 volts. If it goes below 3.2 volts, then you've effectively damaged the battery. And that battery could become unstable, could puff up, could be damaged. There are ways of rescuing batteries, but from a complete safe point of view, you don't want to use a battery if you've run it below that voltage, because the cells may have been damaged and it may become unstable. So you want to avoid them going below 3.2 volts. When you're charging the battery, a decent battery charger such as this one will charge the voltage of the batteries to 4.2 volts per cell, and that's when the battery is maximum charge. That's when it's filled up. The charger should cut off and you're basically good to go. The battery's good to go. Now, there's nothing wrong with you charging these batteries the night before the game. The storage charge that I mentioned is more if you're going to leave them for any length of time without using them, but you don't want to store them fully charged. So that's storage out the way. You've got to have 3.8 volts per cell for storage. Do not allow your battery to drop below 3.2 volts per cell, and your maximum charge is approximately 4.2 volts per cell, which your charger should take care of all of that for you with regard to storage and maximum charge. Running it down below the safe voltage, the easiest way to check it is periodically check with one of these items. With regard to, if you haven't got one of those and you want to check it in the field, if you notice that the performance of your replica is starting to slow down on rate of fire, then there is a chance that you've run the battery completely down. It's time to change it, or get into the habit of changing your batteries midway through the day. You know, if you're changing it after a couple of games or something like that, have a few of these batteries spare, so that'll cover you for any instances where that will happen. With regard to storage for long term or even after a game, I use one of these, which is an old ammo crate. You can get these online. I think this particular one was around 10 British pounds. When you do get one of these, they come with a rubber seal in the top of the lid. You want to remove that rubber seal, and then you're safe to store your batteries in one of those. You want to remove the rubber seal because that makes it watertight, and if one of these does go off in there and it's sealed up, it's basically going to become a bit like a bomb. There's going to be a lot of pressure in there and it could explode. So you want to take the seal out, which is easy enough to do. You just pull the seal out, and that's the kind of thing you can store in. You can buy specifically made LiPo safes and those sorts of things, and they do contain any fire that possibly could occur. But as I say, I've had these batteries for quite some time. I use a lot of lithium polymer batteries, and if you follow the details I've given you there, use a decent charger, use a LiPo charging bag while they're charging. Do not leave the battery unattended while it's charging. If you have a capability of charging the battery on a non-flammable surface, that is the best. Somewhere away from any sources of ignition, just in case the worst should happen. It's unlikely, but it can happen, so take precautions. But never leave them unattended while they're charging. Use a decent charger, use a LiPo fireproof bag. Charge the batteries to storage charge when you're finished for the day. You can charge them up the night before your game, whichever is easier for you. Get it up to 4.2 volts and monitor the voltage throughout your game day. Don't allow it to drop below 3.2 volts. Now, with regard to the actual charger and charging, I have had people at my home site come up to me before. They can't figure out what you're actually supposed to set the settings at on these chargers. A rough rule of thumb is when it says what current to charge them at, if you look at this battery, you'll see that it says 1100 milliamp hours on it. Now, I never charge my batteries at any higher than what they will call 1C, which basically means 1.1 amp. It's an 1100 milliamp hour battery, so it's 1.1 amp. You divide by the 1000. This is a 1000 milliamp hour battery. If I was to charge that at 1C, I would set my charging current at 1 amp and no higher. Now, you might also notice on this battery it says that it's capable of fast charge, 5C. What that basically means is this battery is capable of being charged at 5 amps. Now, the difference between charging them at higher currents, it just means that they'll reach maximum charge more rapidly. They'll charge up quicker. A bit like your mobile phone, if that's got rapid charge, it's just putting more current in the battery and the battery charges up faster. Now, I don't like doing that with these batteries because I like to keep my batteries for a long time. I don't want to be buying them all the time. So I always charge at 1C. If you want to charge at half a C, that's fine as well. It'll just take a lot longer to charge the battery. So if that was the case on a 1000 milliamp hour, instead of charging it at 1 amp, you charge it at half an amp at 0.5 amps. Again, that would take longer to charge the battery, but you know, there's no problem doing that. But 1C as a general rule is absolutely fine. So if you've got an 1100 milliamp hour battery, 1.1 amps. A 1000 milliamp hour battery, 1 amp. A 2000 milliamp hour battery, 2 amps. Just divide by the 1000, that'll give you your charging current if you want to charge at 1C. And 1C is safe to give the battery some good longevity and to avoid any risk of it puffing up or getting damaged during the charging process. With regard to the charger, what I'll do is I'll show you a few settings on that just now, show you what we do when we're charging a battery and how we work on that one, how we set the charger up and how we go, and then we'll see where we go from there. Okay, so we're going to cut over to that. Okay, so I hope you can make this out on camera, but that's me with the charger ready to go. So you can see that it says program select lithium battery. Now, we are going to be charging a lithium battery, but you can change it. We've got NIMH and NICAD there just by pressing the arrow. We've got PB lead acid. We can set our own settings up, but I wouldn't suggest playing with that. And lots of others. You can set a memory in this one, but I never bother with that. I just set it up for each particular battery. So we're going to be doing a lithium battery. So we hit start. Now at this point I would normally plug my battery in. So it's a free cell battery. Because it's an 11.1 battery, that's free cell. If it was a 7.4 volt battery, it's 2 cell. So we plug in to the balance board on the free cell setting. You can see it says free S, and that's what it's referring to. We then plug our power lead into our Dean's connector, and that's our battery ready for charging. You've got different settings. You've got LiPo charge, LiPo fast charge, LiPo storage. I'm going to put this battery into storage, but if I was getting ready for a game day, I would go to LiPo balance charge. LiPo discharge is to discharge it down. We don't usually use that. I don't use it anyway. So LiPo balance charge, that's one we're interested in. If you're on a game day, you set it to LiPo balance charge. If you've come back from a game day and you want to put the battery away, we go to LiPo storage. So we're at LiPo storage. Great. The amps is set at 2 amps. You can see that the charger has already identified it because we've plugged it in as a free cell battery as 11.1 volts. But we don't want to charge this one at 2 amps. As you can see, it's a 1000 milliamp hour battery. So if you remember what we said before, we want to charge it at 1C. So in order to charge it at 1C, we press the enter button until we drop down to the amps, and then we press minus. And then you can see it's flashing at 1 amp. Now at this point, we get our LiPo guard bag, and we put the battery in the LiPo guard bag, and then we hit and hold enter. Now the battery is being checked by the charger. It's saying that it's a free series battery, or free cell battery, which is 11.1. Do we want to go ahead? So we hit enter, and as you can see, the charger does the rest of it. It puts it into storage mode. You can press this button and I can see what the individual cell voltages are, which is 3.8 volts. Now you can see that the charger has stopped. The reason the charger has stopped is because this battery is already in storage mode. I've already charged it to storage level, but that gives you an example of how to use your charger. When you've finished, you press stop, unplug the battery from the charger, and then that's you ready to put that battery away and keep it in storage. If we were doing it for a game day, obviously that would take substantially longer. It would keep charging until it was at 4.2 volts. But that's basically how to use one of these smart chargers. Okay, so what did we learn from that? We've basically learned how to use the charger. I hope that was simple enough to follow. Most of the chargers will work in the same way. It will ask you what sort of voltage you want to, what sort of current, sorry, you'd like to charge your batteries at. So what have we covered? The basic things to remember is that when you've finished for the day, put them in storage charge. Your charger should be able to do that for you. Whether you're putting them in storage charge or whether you're putting them in balance charge, which balance charge is what you do when you're charging them up fully to go to the game day, you always charge, well I always charge at 1C. Charge as slow as you can. The slower you charge, the less stress it puts on the battery. So if you want to charge less than 1C, you can do. It doesn't do them any harm, just takes a lot longer to charge the battery up. So you can set that up to how you want. Always charge in a charging bag, or some form of safe to keep the battery contained in case the worst should happen. Never forget to put them in storage charge. Always monitor your voltage in each particular cell of the battery through the day, because you don't want to drop it below 3.2 volts and make the battery unstable and also damage the battery, make it useless to you. If a battery like a lithium polymer is to puff up, in other words it's not a nice neat uniform, you'll know when it puffs up, it'll go all puffy and squidgy. That is a time to dispose of that LiPo battery. You no longer want that battery anywhere near your replica or your charger, because once they puff up they are at risk of setting fire. I've only ever had one lithium polymer battery puff on me since I've been using them. If you look after them, they should be absolutely fine. So if you do get a puffed up one, don't use it, dispose of it correctly. The correct way to normally dispose of them is leave it in a bucket of salt water for a good 24 hours and then take it to a battery recycling centre and get rid of it there. With regard to charging, try not to do it on a flammable surface. Always use a decent charger. Make sure you don't charge at more than what the battery is rated at. If it's a rapid charge battery, then you're fine to charge it at the rating that it says. But I would always stick to 1C. With regard to keeping these safe, don't puncture them, don't bash them, keep them relatively secure in your replica. You don't really want them exposed. You certainly don't want to short them out, so try to keep them dry within your replica. And that is really about covered for lithium polymer. If you have a decent charger, that's going to take care of most of the problems you may have when you're trying to use these and charge them, and a lot of the worries that people have. When you're storing the batteries for any length of time, you've got a number of batteries, maybe invest in something like this to keep them safe if you're in your house or a garage or somewhere you don't want to set fire. The only slight difference for lithium technology batteries that you'll have is lithium ion batteries. From what I've read on the lithium ions, they don't really like to be charged at any higher than 1.5 amps. So you'd set your charger to 1.5 amps. That Titan battery that was in my previous video was a 3000 milliamp hour lithium ion. So by the 1C logic, you could charge that at 3 amps. But from what I read on it, they recommend going no higher than 1.5 amps. So that's what I charge that at. Now again, that doesn't do any harm, it just takes longer to charge. So if you enjoy what you've seen here, if it's taught you anything, if you feel a bit more comfortable now using a lithium polymer battery and a lithium polymer battery charger, then give us a thumbs up on the video. If you think that I've missed anything, or if there's anything else you'd like to know, then let me know. Drop a comment down there and tell me what I've perhaps missed or information you'd like to see. And if you're enjoying my series of videos, if you're finding them useful, then maybe subscribe to the channel. I'll look to upload a new video every Sunday. So hopefully I will see you in my next video. Thanks very much.